You are listening to the 90 Days Later podcast with Anna Charles, episode 169. Welcome to the 90 Days Later podcast, where I show you how life with less alcohol is more fun than you think. I work with high achievers who struggle to drink a glass of wine without it turning into 2 bottles. I'm the one they call when they want to take it or leave it. So if you want to change your relationship with alcohol that doesn't involve counting days sober, you're in the right place. Hello everybody and welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing? Everything is going really well here. Now today we're going to be talking about something that actually is a fairly common experience, and it all comes down to pouring drinks and not drinking. Now, this can be maybe when you're pouring drinks for guests who come around for dinner, or maybe you're out at a restaurant, or you're pouring drinks for your husband or wife or your grown-up children, or maybe you are doing this because you are kind of known as the wine, the connoisseur. There's some ritual that your friends have around this, and that you are the main person when it comes to maybe selecting and talking about and knowing about and pouring the wine. And suddenly, as you're doing this, while you're in the act of pouring, you're thinking, well, I should be drinking too. Or should I? So that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about disconnecting the act of pouring with the act of drinking. So let's start with one of the biggest reasons why people drink in these situations, even if they maybe don't really want to, and that is social pressure. And maybe you have had this thought. This is a very specific thought that I hear quite frequently, that I know I certainly had back in the day, is it's rude to say no. Now this can come up if a guest brings you a bottle that they say, come on, we need to open it, we need to test it now, right? We need to drink it right now. And you're thinking, cripes, I don't have a drink plan for this. This was unexpected. So we can have that scenario. We can have the scenario where you have bought the wine, and then you're going to be pouring it for everyone. You're saying, actually, you can all have it, but not me. I mean, that can feel kind of weird, right? Weird to people. And, maybe you have all sorts of thoughts that, well, maybe are they going to think that this is a bit of a dodge bottle of wine, right? I'm kind of foisting this on them. I wouldn't lower myself to drink this, but I'm going to give it to them. Now, I'm sort of kidding, not kidding, but, we have all these stories that we create from this kind of scenario. And I want you to see that this is all back to drinking being so ingrained in our culture that when someone declines, it can throw other people off. I want you to imagine that you go to a dinner party and you're all going to bring some food, and maybe somebody brings along some steamed broccoli with almonds or something, right? And you're passing the food round, and you decline. You decline the broccoli because you're not having it. I mean, people would not have a bit of a fit about this. They might not even notice. Or they might think, my gosh, look at that person. I wish I could say no to the broccoli too. Right? But when it comes to the wine, we have this big hoo-ha. We have all this drama about it. Right? So, and I talk about this again and again on a podcast because it's such a big thing. But this idea of worrying what other people are thinking, or worrying what kind of story they might be making this, or worrying what we think we're making this, we can ditch all that. It really doesn't matter. It's not important, because all of that discomfort is coming from in your head. And if you think you're being rude by not drinking, you can go with that thought and still be rude, or you can change the thought, right? We just have these stories, and maybe it's all right to be rude. Maybe putting your drinking goals or not drinking goals before being socially correct is a good thing, right? Maybe it's all right to be rude. We just need to be very clear with ourselves where we're coming from. Another obstacle, I'll call it that comes up with this idea of pouring and not drinking is, you might think, It's not fair on my wife to expect her to finish the bottle. And yes, this is a real life situation I have spoken about with people more than once, right? Maybe you would normally split a bottle of wine on a date night. And you would do that because, the wine you like to drink only comes in the bottles. If you were just going to have a glass or two, they actually don't have the wine that you like by the glass, right? I'm tending to find actually more restaurants are having nicer glasses of wine available. Let's just say you can only buy it by the bottle. And now you're thinking, well, if I'm just going to have less or I'm going to have none, maybe I'm just going to have half a glass, right? Or a very small glass. That means I'm sort of basically requiring my wife or my husband, but I've heard this also, my wife, to drink, 4/5 of the bottle. And that hardly seems fair. Now, there are other options. I was going to say obstacles. There are other options here, right? If you do want to buy the bottle, and because, you like that particular wine and you're going to pour a small amount for you, and you're going to pour a glass or two for your wife, you do not have to pour all the rest of the bottle. I mean, you can take it home, you can leave it. I mean, there are options here. Yes, waste, right? Would you rather leave some of the wine over or drink it when it wasn't planned or that's not what you wanted for yourself? But I want you to see how we would immediately think, my gosh, that's not fair on them because they're kind of going to have to step up to the plate and drink more. If you're going out to dinner and maybe you're sharing a steak or something, those great big Chateaubriand steaks, and you've just had enough, you don't then expect your partner to eat everything. I mean, I just have never come across that, right? So, well, now is that down to you now? You've got to eat all those extra grams of meat because I'm not able to. No, what would you do? You'd probably just leave it. You'd say, that was nice, it was too much. And that's it, move on, right? But when it comes to the alcohol, we have all this big fuss about it. So it's totally fine if you're pouring the wine and you're drinking less of it. This does not mean that your partner has to pick up the slack. But it also means you don't have to sacrifice your own decisions to drink less just to avoid waste. If when you are pouring, you find it difficult because that is when you have an absolute sense of missing out, right? Your thoughts are running wild. This is not fair. This looks so nice. I wish I could be having this too. I want you to see that this is all optional. We talk about that on the podcast. All thoughts are optional. Deprivation is a state of mind. You can decide you're deprived or you could decide to stop feeling deprived. And you can do it just like that, in an instant. So if this is you, if when you are pouring for others, when it's a dry day, particularly when it's a dry day, or maybe if you're just having the one, and you'd normally, have 2, 3, share a bottle, I want you to be aware that that's going to happen. And how do you want to look at this story differently? Feeling deprived, feeling like you're missing out, feeling it's not fair, feeling triggered by pouring wine for other people, when it would be just so much easier if I didn't have to pour it. I mean, if I didn't have to look, if the waiter did it, maybe I wasn't so aware. Right? But these are all just stories. They're all just excuses. And that sounds a bit harsh, but they are. If you're going to rewrite them, how would you want to rewrite them? Here's another way this shows up, this idea of pouring, divorcing pouring from drinking. It's when people tell me they don't drink much, they just have a few sips. I remember this one client in particular, she wasn't drinking at the time. Because she was really trying to go alcohol free for a while. But her husband liked to drink most days, and she would pour the wine for him. And as she poured the wine for him, she would have just 2 or 3 sips from his wine glass. That's all it was, just 2 or 3 sips. But then she found that she was kind of always doing this, right? This became part of the pouring habit. So she'd uncork the bottle, pour for him, put the bottle away, have a couple of sips from his, hand it to him, and that was it. And she asked me, Anna, is that bad? Have I got a problem with that? And my answer always is, do you like your reasons for what you were doing? But more specifically here, and if this is you, if you're doing this on the daily, would you want to plan that, right? Do you find that that's something that's just part of what I do? I'm going to be having 3 sips a day. If you react against that, if this is not something you want to be saying about yourself, this is not something that fits with how you see yourself, then you want to think very carefully about what those 3 sips are meaning. And I want you to see that, maybe have a go at, when you're pouring, to not have the 3 sips and see, what's missing there. Because if there's any element of feeling left out and feeling that this isn't fair and feeling this isn't right and just wanting something, but not really wanting to plan it and put your hand up and acknowledge and say, yeah, I am drinking, 3 sips a night, then there's something to investigate there. If you're not willing to do that, that's interesting information. And what comes up if you would consider not having those 3 sips, right? If you could just now, if we worked and you said, right, I'm just going to pour the wine and then put the wine away. You're going to go on and have your own evening. You're not going to have the sips. How does that feel? And whenever anyone brings up something like this, I always think that the fact that they're bringing it up as a question to ask if this is okay indicates that something about it does not sit right with them. So if this is you kind of have this follow-on behavior, let's say, from the pouring. I want you to look at, how does that behavior align with where you want to be? Is this purposeful? Is this intentional? I always want you to be intentional and be making decisions in advance when it's alcohol. And how does that all sit with, okay, I'm just going to have, I'm going to have these 3 sips. From a practical perspective, here are some ways to disconnect pouring from drinking if this is something you struggle with. Firstly, create a ritual for yourself, especially if you're the one with all the razzmatazz, right? You know all the stuff about the wine, you do the decanting, and you smell the cork and you decant it and let it breathe and pour it through one of those funny funnel things. Right, if this is you, if you have all the razzmatazz and the ritual about it, create a new ritual for you. Right, I often talk about my favorite drink right now is sparkling water. I love San Pellegrino. I have no agreement, by the way. I have no business relationship with San Pellegrino. I love San Pellegrino in a wine glass. That is heavenly. And it gives me ritual, right? I get, it's a pretty glass. Poured the wine for the others. Just this evening I poured wine for my husband and my son's girlfriend. And then I poured a glass of water for myself. Just because it's alcohol free doesn't mean you can't have the ritual around it. When you're pouring, if you find that that's a cue for you to really sort of go into overdrive with desire, I would just reset in that moment and remember why you're doing what you're doing and why you've chosen to not drink that night. Just have a little pause. Slow it down. If you feel awkward socially, because you do believe it's rude to not drink, if you're with somebody and they want to talk, if you see this a lot, right, in our society, when we open up emotionally, when people open up emotionally to friends, there's often alcohol involved because it loosens the tongue. And maybe you're with somebody who wants to chat about that and you're pouring the wine, but then they're noticing you're not having any of your own, and I've even had people tell me that they think that maybe it's a little suspicious. Like maybe I'm not going to join in the conversation. I'm going to be sitting more on the outside of the conversation. I just want you to see that all of those beliefs and thoughts and ideas are coming from you. Because we have no real idea what the other person is thinking. Even if they tell us, we have no real idea. So get very curious with that. See what's holding you back. Again, it could be something as simple as, it's just very rude to not drink if I pour. It could go back to the old tasting days. I don't know if it was King Henry VIII where we would have a taste. Someone to taste the food. Maybe you're thinking, if I'm not drinking the wine, there's something weird about that. So those are some practical suggestions where you can start moving forward on this and really just start pulling apart the idea of pouring and drinking. Just tease the two. They are two separate activities. All right, so that was what I wanted to talk about today. If you struggle with this idea of pouring and drinking, I want you to know that it's not uncommon and that there are different ways of thinking about it, and just start to tease them apart, right? In terms of how you could take steps forward. But if you are ready to not just take a step or two forward, you are ready to just go. You want to change your relationship with alcohol. You want this summer, and yes, this summer, to be able to go on holiday and not think, oh, I got to have the pina colada for have a good time. If you want to just completely upend how you see life, liberate and free yourself from worrying, is there going to be enough alcohol around to have a good time? Then you have got to work with me. I've been there and done it. I have helped many, many people with this. I can give you the fast track. I can put you on the track to succeed at this. Stop going around the hamster wheel. That is totally optional. If you are reliving the same old Groundhog Day, every day, waking up saying, I'm not going to drink tonight, and then buckling and then drinking and hating yourself, we will interrupt that. You deserve that. You deserve this for your life. You deserve this for the person you are now. You deserve this for the person who you will become. To get this is available to you right now. Go to 90dayslater.co and click on the book a call button at the top. We will get on the phone. It is free. That initial call was just seeing, if you want to work with me, seeing what I could do for you. And we'll look at where you are, where you want to be. I'll build the exact plan. You will leave the call knowing with certainty what we're going to work on. Which means that when you decide to say yes to yourself, we hit the ground running. It is so good. All right, that is available to you right now. Otherwise, I will see you next week. If you like what you're learning in the podcast and you want to take the work further and achieve total freedom around alcohol, let's talk. I help my clients stop reaching for that first 6 p.m. rolls around. Email me for more information on anna@90dayslater.co. And if you did enjoy the show, I'd really appreciate if you'd leave a rating and review to help others find the 90 Days Later podcast.